Okay, so let's jump right into it because I want to honor and respect a full hour lunch. Because I know that with a 2 day training that you're probably not purely doing lunch. You're probably going to have to return to other pieces of that. And so I want to give that to you if you need it. Okay. So we're going to go into talking about family systems and what it means to approach this from a family systems theory. Because if you'll start to recognize this when we talk about family systems later on and the disease of addiction and substance use disorder, you're going to see it from a family model of how this impacts. And so I wanted to take a step back and look at it really quickly here. So here you'll notice I have a mobile. I just actually got into conversation with a friend. If it's mobile or mobile, I say mobile. But if you look at this, let's pretend that this is a family system, right? This is mom, dad, grandparents, sibling, child, right? You get to say it based on your experience of what a family is. If one family member, say, has a substance use disorder or is dealing with a mental health challenge, and they start to go through something, what happens to the rest?
Throws it off balance.
It throws it off balance. Are they thrown off balance all in the same way?
No.
No, right? They are all responding differently to that being thrown off balance. And if someone has died, that balance has shifted permanently, right? And so to recognize this from a family systems theory helps us understand what do we need to know as far as providing care in a way that incorporates all, again, stakeholders, families, but those particular people that create long-term influence for that child. And so if we look at Mary Bowen's family systems theory, we recognize we're all connected, how that particular pressure creates different roles and patterns that change each particular person differently. And when there's presence of a substance use disorder and mental health, it's not just the individual's problem, right? Go back to stigma. What does it say? That's their thing. Why can't they just fill in the blank? It's not just the individual's problem. And when there has been additional losses, it changes everything. So, how can we take that into consideration as we start to build strategies and resources and services? And one of the core components, if you look at family systems theory, there's a lot of different particular concepts from each area that are super helpful to understand. But I'm going to focus particularly on differentiations of self. And the reason that I like to focus on this, because it not only helps us learn in context from a trauma-informed and grief-informed approach what we need to know, but it also gives us some clear ways that we can bolster and strategize around things moving forward. So differentiation of self is maintaining a sense of self while staying emotionally connected to the family system. And so these are the factors that actually influence that differentiation of self. On the first bolded five are the ones that we are seeking to understand, right? The family origins experience, genetic predispositions, how old, developmental experience, are there special needs? Is there neurodiversity? What do we need to be mindful of? Trauma and significant events that can impact their perception and past experiences. And then what we all just went into, the cultural context of all of these particular components. The next part are the things that we have influence over or ways we can resource the family, right? Education and self-awareness, we're doing that all together right now, but then how do you give that to children and the families? Understanding their understanding of a relationship experience, what maybe are unhealthy patterns, what are not natural ways of communication, how can we bolster healthy relationships, how do we help them look for attributes that support healthy communication? What are the ways that they are coping? So it's almost an assessment here. What are their natural coping skills that they're utilizing in this current moment? How can we introduce ones that can support them at a macro and micro level? Maybe there's opportunities to introduce regulation techniques, mindfulness techniques, but how do we also help them create the connection that this is something they can utilize when they're doing something else, right? Oftentimes when I'm working with kids, and we have, say, a coping skills activity. I'm going to use the buzzword, and it might make you think of bubble baths and whatever. But really, what I'm saying is, what do you do for fun? when you've had a hard day or when school is rough, what are you doing? What are you naturally doing to relax, take care of yourself, disconnect, be with friends, and you'll start to uncover maybe some healthy and unhealthy habits, decision-making patterns. And so then this is more not only helping them with self-efficacy, but then helping them recognize, are your decision-making patterns coming from your values? Are they coming in alignment with what you believe? And if they're not, how can we help increase that? So in your training handout, there's actually an activity in there that's really easy to do with kids, whether you're a parent or you run groups or you work individuals, called the guiding star, where you have them create little shapes of stars and then you have them label, what are your guiding stars? Is it honesty? Is it family? Is it being with friends? Is it helping others? Kindness? And then as you put them together, you can have them connect them to create their own constellation and talk about, well, what does it look like when you're doing it? And so then help them see the patterns that they're creating. And so this is something that they can end up putting in their room, doing in a workbook, doing in a journal, but it's in there for you all and it's adaptable to if it's you're giving it the care to your own child or in a professional setting. Emotional intelligence, right? And so recognizing our own emotional experience, our own emotional awareness and what that response is, being able to understand what's happening around us and how those two influence one another, cognitive flexibility, which we'll get into more tomorrow, and to understand, particularly for children, that the concept and identity formation, that it's still evolving. So that's going to be a process that continually changes as their brain continues to expand. So what do we have to take into consideration? Because when families have high levels of differentiation of self, we see better emotional regulation, more balanced relationships, and ability to maintain personal views while respecting others, clearer personal boundaries, and higher stress tolerance. For families, particularly who have been impacted by substance use disorder or mental health, we might see low levels of differentiation of self, where there's more emotional reactivity, a tendency to conform or rebel, the difficulty of separating the thoughts from feelings, and a relational intimacy and dependence. So, those latter parts are the ways that we can build those areas up so that we can increase their levels of differentiation of self. And so, three core areas that can be done in is understanding communication patterns. So, this is twofold, right? First, we need to take an opportunity to be learners and assess what is their communication pattern as is. Is it a I talk, you listen? Is there lack of communication in general? Is there lack of language around particular things? Is there an interaction or change, or is it much more loud and dynamic and people talking on top of one another? What are the patterns that they're used to naturally? And then that can help inform what can I bring to help create a more healthy communication pattern. Conflict resolution, or sometimes for families, the lack of seeing conflict resolution. How do they see problems being resolved? Is it not talked about? Is it swept under the rug? Are there learning opportunities, or do they just never revisit those particular patterns? One of the strongest things I was told by a doctor at the Betty Ford Center, and he was a really well-known psychologist, um, and his wife was, if you have the opportunity with parents, the smallest, simplest thing you can do is if they see a fight, how are we also letting them see the apology? How are they seeing the resolution? So to recognize that ending part, not that it's good and it's over and let's just walk away, they need to be able to see that there was a resolution, there was an accountability towards behavior, that there was recognizing the other person. It's a practical step that can be implemented in families if the conditions are right, right? And then emotional support. So recognizing that for a lot of families, especially if you take in the context of culture, sometimes it was not okay to feel. And then if you think about substance use disorder, that is also true, not okay to feel, right? And so how can we create an understanding of emotional support, what it means to recognize feelings, that feelings aren't bad, but they're information. How do we help bolster and create spaces where they can express in order to understand, create coping strategies around those feelings, and also to help make meaning, particularly in grief and loss? And so the takeaway here is to recognize the family mobile. Adversities experienced by one family member impact the need of all family members. It can impact each one differently. So, as you were all talking about different stakeholders, someone even mentioned like the needs and stakeholders differ per person. So good to understand, right? So then, if we're trying to decrease barriers, what does that one person need as opposed to the next? Are we collaborative? Are we reaching outside of our silo of just working with the children or just in the education setting to partner with those people in the community? And then build those differentiation muscles, right? Increase those healthy factors around communication, conflict resolution, and emotional support to create that higher differentiation of self. Okay. So now that we've gone there, we're going to go into child development. And this is a particularly important part because this overlaps not only in mental health, substance use, but grief and loss and the bereavement process. Because now that we have understanding and context of family and culture, child development plays a big role when we're looking at youth. We can't say the word child and it applies to everyone, right? Each child is at a different place, a different age, has different needs, temperament, and as they get older, it changes again. So sometimes we have to revisit things that we've already addressed at 4, at 6, at 12, at 16, and their questions look different each time we move. So, what does that look like? I like to fold in Erickson's stages of psychosocial development. For a lot of people here, you might be familiar with it, right? And so, what this essentially says, Erickson talks about through each age, children will go through a conflict. And when they successfully go through that conflict during that stage, then they can move to the next part that builds on their psychosocial development. So, for instance, in infancy, they're battling with the conflict of being able to trust the world or not having trust in the world. And that question might sound like, can I trust the things around me? So when a baby cries and they're picked up, they're like, okay, someone responded to my need. Or when a baby's hungry and then all of a sudden a bottle appears, I can trust that I will be fed, that my responses are getting met with my need, right? And so once that has been achieved, they move to the next one and then the next one. And when it's done successfully, they build on one another. So they start to have trust, autonomy, initiative of being able to like do things, industry, of feeling skilled, to their identity, to also the feelings of feeling loved, intimacy, right? What's important to recognize is that even if you have someone who's 6 or 12 years old, but they haven't gotten through a conflict that, say, happened in 2 to 3 or 3 to 4, that they can't necessarily build on identity until they actually will go back and work on that autonomy and agency or initiative. So it's important to recognize this because even if you have a child who is a 16-year-old, if they had a loss or substance use disorder has been present since they were 5, they might be there. That's actually who you're working with, right? And so you might still have to do things around building that because when they don't have that, this is where we start to show that unsuccessful outcomes. I cannot trust the world. I cannot do things on my own. I'm scared to try. I'm not good. I don't know who I am in my identity, and I'm not capable of love or being loved. And so this is helpful to understand because then this is a folding in component that you might be introducing these themes and helping them work through these developmental processes based on what has happened. And to recognize that a 12-year-old might not be going through identity if they still haven't wrestled with shame and doubt and building autonomy. When we presented this to the adult children of substance use disorder, they were like, yeah. And to recognize that caregivers are still probably, if they still have an unaddressed trauma in any of these areas, they probably still even need resource around building towards agency, towards, industry, towards identity. So this might be something you notice that you carry throughout the family and to recognize, ooh, the nuances in a family, they might be at all different levels. So what can we be mindful of? And so this leads us into talking about ACEs, right? Adverse childhood experiences. And so many people are familiar with ACEs, but what ACEs refers to is the potentially traumatic or adverse experiences or challenges between the ages of infancy to 18 years of age that can impact long-term physical, emotional, and mental health needs of children. It has been known to change a child's physical health outcomes, emotional health outcomes, and we'll talk about what that looks like because what qualifies as an adverse childhood experience. And it really goes to their stress response. Now, stress in itself is not a bad thing, right? It is a response in our nervous system that tells us what we might need. Sometimes it tells us to flee or fight, right? That response, but it also helps us navigate. But what happens? What's the difference when this stress becomes an adverse childhood experience? So we're going to walk through that together. So this is Simone. We named her together, and so this is Simone, little Simone, and this is her stress response system, and we have it displayed as like a little fire alarm, right? And so this is what she uses to kind of recognize when her body needs to respond. And so when you have positive stress, it is normal and temporary, right? And so that could look like, say, Simone has a test tomorrow and she's a little nervous. She's not sure. She doesn't like tests. But that test, that stress response elicits her to maybe study, seek support, ask for help, and do these processes. And so this is an example of a normal and temporary positive stress, right? After the test is done, she's relieved and it's over. Great. Tolerable stress is a stronger response, but manageable and is recovered. It's dependent on supportive factors. So again, these examples, I recognize that if a child has anxiety and these different components, those particular examples might not transfer the same way. But for just sake of examples of recognizing the levels, I'm utilizing it. And so for an example of tolerable stress might be someone was in an accident with her caregiver. No one was hurt. Everyone was fine. There was a stronger response, but the caregiver came out, showed her that the person in the other car was safe. They showed that their own bodies were safe. The caregiver was telling Simone what was going to happen next, that there was going to report. And then that night, they do a check-in to make sure if she has any questions. They take a moment to not do anything for the rest of the day because they just went through something that was a little scary. And they do a little regulation, right? It's tolerable stress. It's stronger, but there was factors, supportive factors that made that tolerable, right? And then there's toxic stress. So this is when it's on all the time. It's dealing with adversities that are ongoing, which makes the body's alarm, the stress response, stay on, even when there's no presence of danger. So something that elicits that are those adverse childhood experiences, right? That's where we see hypervigilancy. We see, a somatic response. We see changes in behavior. And so what are some examples of an adverse childhood experience? So we have abuse on here, so emotional, physical, and sexual, neglect, both on an emotional and physical neglect, and household challenges, which is domestic violence, substance abuse or misuse or challenges, meant the presence of a mental illness or mental challenge or diagnosis, a parental separation or divorce, incarcerated caregiver, but also, put that into potentially deployment, incarceration, deportation, all of those different factors, and death of a significant person, right? So that's in there too, which is what we're going to talk about later. But there's also community challenges, right? We've seen an increase with community violence. If we think about the natural disasters, say of North Carolina and Maui and LA, the fires, those natural disasters create their toxic stress response, right? The alarm system staying on, social injustice, bullying. So all of these are factors that can create an adverse childhood experience. Now, what we're saying also is just because they go through this doesn't mean they're destined for those factors that impact their physical, mental, and emotional health, right? There's an opportunity here then to build positive childhood experiences that help build resiliency, which is what we're going to be talking about as we go on. One of my pet peeves is when something happens and they say, Kids are resilient, they'll bounce back. But then we do nothing to introduce those resiliency factors. It is built, and there's accountability to their system to help ensure that resiliency is true, right? Because then how many times did we say that? And then that same child is an adult processing childhood trauma, right? So we know that that's not how it works. So how do we build resiliency? How do we help encourage and help them and develop those healthy habits? And how do we help increase supportive relationships and their perception of the supportive relationships? There's been times, particularly children impacted by stigma, whether it's substance use disorder, domestic violence, suicide, homicide, all these different losses that have all these resources around them, but to them, they can't access them. So, how can we increase that opportunity to connect into those resources and then be able to receive it, right? Let's remove that internalized stigma. So here are some examples of positive childhood experiences that can be introduced, right? Particularly if you're working with your own family, is how can we introduce talking openly about feelings with family? It is family or a person that stood by them through difficult times. It's being the opportunity, looking back at culture, and participating in community traditions or rituals, a sense of belonging, right? And so in the studies that are included in the training handout, children and families impacted by the stigmatic loss of someone from substance use disorder, they talk about how they do not feel like they belong. So this sense of belonging has been disconnected. Feeling supported by friends. And then the last two of had a non-caregiving safe adult who took interest and felt safe and protected by an adult at home. Studies across education, mental health, substance use disorder, grief and loss and bereavement. You can look at all across. One of the strongest protective factors that build resiliency, the ability to navigate adversity and challenges, was the presence for children, one safe adult, just one, right? So if we can do anything, this one thing has been shown to increase their ability to navigate adversity exponentially. Can we find that? Who is that person? Are they the one that we need to educate? Are they the one we need to inform? Are they the one that we need to find? What does it look like? And so as we go into this, I want to recognize just the reality of that hierarchy of needs, right? A lot of us in what we do really focus on mental health and wellness, right? But we've seen it. We've seen it where we have this resource. We know that's preventative intervention, postvention, that will help them mitigate risk moving forward. But they do to safety and physiological needs, they can't access you, right? I still need to put food on the table for my children. I need to find a place to sleep tonight. I can't go to that because I'll get fired. I lose my insurance. I need my employment. I don't feel safe in my own home. So how can I talk about emotional wellness right now? I don't need these factors. And so we've all encountered it where we brought a service, but because they're not physically there, it doesn't feel accessible. So this is where it's important to recognize if I have this service, again, going back to stakeholders, but from a perspective of building their readiness and availability to it, what are some safety and physiological resources that I have that can help this? So we're going to do another breakout room. It's going to be longer because you all are going to build your resources together. All right. So it's 15 minutes. You're going to be in rooms of 5 again. And what I want you all to do is think of some basic barriers or reasons families do not access services or cannot access their services. And then what resources do you have? Did you have personally that your agency has that you're connected with that support basic family needs, such as food and water insecurity, houselessness, maybe medical attention, employment, clothing? I've seen wonderful things around, mothers getting breast milk, as well as other components, shelters. Oh, the things that were out there that people in the room didn't know existed to help their families. It all came out in this. And then people even had resource guides that had all of this, but other people didn't know it existed. Do you have that? What we're going to do is after you're going to breakout room, Zach is going to drop a link to this Google Sheet. It's also in the links that he showed you at the beginning of training, right? Now you're going to find the breakout room that correlates with the room number. So if you're in breakout room 16, you're going to go to tab 16. Select someone to scribe so you're not typing on top of each other. Or if you work out a system works best for your room, I'll leave it to you, but that's a suggestion. And write the agency name, the services that's provided, and I would ask you to include if it's county, state, or maybe national wide, so that we can see if this is something that could be shared with other regions in Illinois. And then contact information if you have it. This is why we're giving you 15 minutes. We want you to be able to find the contact. Maybe you have a personal contact that you know they do such a great and phenomenal job of making families feel welcome. Pop it in there. And then what we're going to do on our end is after you fill this thing with all the resources, we are actually, I won't say we, because I won't take credit. Zach has lovingly consolidated all of these resources together and you will actually get sent these. So now you all have a comprehensive list that you built together with the people that you know in this room. So it feels more familiar, right? So this is what we're doing. Um, any questions before you are released to your rooms? Okay, great. Ambrosia is probably gonna and Terry are gonna hop around just to make sure technical difficulties around using the rooms is met. And if you have any questions, you can pop back into the lobby and ask us or get Zach via the messenger. But go on in, look for the link. Zach just dropped it out in there and then start filling those resources. And we'll be watching. We love watching the resources build. See
Will
you
you
soon.
also pop in your PowerPoint before that in regards to what areas to look for as well?
Sure, sure. I will
Sure.
hold
Thank
it
you.
on the screen. This screen, was that helpful?
I think the previous slide, Jessica, that talked about the Let's Build slide. And then also it is only still the file is view only, so if you or Zach could update that. Oh, it
I
has
already
been
fixed it.
updated.
Okay.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
I didn't. Somebody must have switched that back. I didn't see it.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Go on
Ready to
in.
go?
We'll see you in a minute. 15 to be exact. All right, that looks more like a number that says almost everyone is here. All right, I saw some pages, filling up, and then I think some people started consolidating to other rooms, and that's totally fine. That's what we're
Yeah,
going to
I
do
put in the wrong
anyways.
room because I didn't check the room number. So that's my
No,
bad. Sorry, room one.
I mean, essence of collaborating, right? Share like it's great. Before we head to lunch, I just want to see, did anyone find a resource that they didn't know existed, were able to share something that was meaningful, or were challenged by the process and maybe saw a gap that needs to be addressed collectively?
uh, room 11, it took out some of the stuff that we typed in and just kept trying to reconnect. So
Mhm. Okay. Thank you, Shay, for letting us know. This sheet is accessible for the whole 2 days we're here. So if you find things like I couldn't find it or I didn't have it or something glitched because the internet is wacky, you know that you can get back in there and add it as needed. So if you're not contained to building on this just here. So if you think of something, go ahead and bring it back later today. Tomorrow it's here, and then we'll consolidate and send it to you after training. Alyssa, I saw your
Thank
head
you.
nodding when I said challenges. Of course. Do you want to share anything?
Yes, I'm actually quite baffled at the whole process of filling in information, but we do offer a SWAN in our area, and I thought that that would be beneficial for our
Hey.
area.
Okay, how are you?
Hi,
Thank you, Alyssa.
thank
Were you
you.
able to put it in there or was it okay? I just make sure on our end we're not glitching on you. Okay. Anyone else?
I think our big thing we all agreed on is like transportation to some of these things. I'm up like as you know, like the northern suburbs, but still even transportation to mental health services, things like that can definitely be a barrier for our families. So they've kind of started to, like, at the school-based level, like bring the therapist to us. So some places will actually do therapy sessions like at school instead of adding the burden of transportation and finding the time. So that's been helpful.
I love that, coming to the community at need. It's great. We had the inverse, but what happened for a family that had lack of transportation, and we partnered with the local municipal bus system, and we're able to get them ongoing bus passes, but then also accompany it with food gift cards everywhere. So because we knew that that was going to take more time for them, and so we're like, oh, what kind of ways can we alleviate? Then if you're coming to group, you come home around dinner time. What can you do? Like, what else can we partner with? But I love that coming in as well. Okay. This was meant to start the creative juices, and I'm sure this is already something that we all do, especially if like you're a nonprofit, you know the power of knowing your network. But it's to bolster it and find ways that we can not only create it, but to John's thing, is to find the gaps, like difficulty in transportation. Downstate, where everything is so spread out, it may be an hour drive to get to a client, to the appointment. So getting people on board is a pain. Yes, I can understand at least that barrier. And so being able to bring the people to them. How do you do that? And how do you do it sustainably, right? Because then there's another barrier. Good conversations to have. Someone unmute?
Jessica, excuse me, it's Miss Tammy. So I was telling our group that I received this. It's Southern Illinois Resource Guide, and it lists all the counties in Southern Illinois. But it is an amazing tool, and I know that not everybody on here is from our area, but this would be a great resource for everybody in this area.
I need that.
Yeah. So it's from like the ROE and McKinney-Vento, but I'll see if I can't figure out how to get access or a link to that for you guys.
Yeah, a link would be great, Tammy, that we could get that.
Yes, please and thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tammy. Uncover the gold. There we go. Okay. I want to respect this hour that I want to give you for lunch. Do everything that you need to. I know that's impossible because the needs are always ongoing, right? But do what you can. Hopefully, something to take care of yourself as well. And then we'll come back at 1:05 so that you get a full 60 minutes. Okay. You're going to close out of this link and you're going to go into the afternoon link. So if you get kicked out right now, just know that's why. You just have to go into the afternoon link. Barb, I hope that you're in that resource guide then. Barb Zerbel's part of her job is to transport kids to mental health services. Wow. Such a need.
We do that within the within our school district that we have. So that's what part of my job is I pick them up at school and then take them there. Also resources for the families, take the parents where they need to go. So even doctor's appointments sometimes.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, they do good work. I've worked with them.
Thanks, Nancy.
Anytime, Barb.
All right. Beth put the link to the Lemon book in there. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to also include that in the resource guide. Zach?
Yep.
Okay. Rose shared Arrowleaf has a resource guide for Southern 7 counties with lots of info from doctor, dentist, social services, food pantries, and etc. Awesome.
What was the name of it?
Arrowleaf?
Oh, okay. I think I got that one.
Okay. Rose, thank you for
Okay.
popping the link. Lisa put a link as well with additional resources. This is great. This is fantastic. Right? To Ambrose's point, we're not trying to recreate the wheel, but sometimes people don't know where the wheel is, right? Where's the wheel? If it's out there, do we know? Does everyone know it exists? Maribeth? Hi, I see your hand.
So I'm going to see if you can hear me. I dropped the Arrow Leaf resource guide in the chat, so if anyone wants to pull it up, it's there. And then as a weird side note, but where I work, we have what we call a reentry resource website, and it lists every county in the state of Illinois separately, and it's supposed to list all the resources in each county. I'm not gonna say it's the best one ever, but it's the website I just dropped. The Department of Corrections has it. And it's an odd place to look that most people don't look, but it is there and it is broken down by every single county in the state.
Awesome. Thank you, Maribeth. I love the resource sharing, like all these links and PDFs and everything coming together. You are an amazing group, I have to tell you. All the activity in the chat and the sharing is just wonderful.
I'm gonna go ahead and close things down if you're okay with that. We'll all go to lunch and we'll all see everybody back here at 1 o'clock.
See y'all soon.